Yeah. Woo! Well. It is emergency podcast time over the PHNX Rising podcast. It is breaking news. It is official. This morning has been rumored for weeks, but Charlotte FC assistant coach Pa-Modou Kah has officially been named the head coach of your Phoenix Rising FC. I am Max Simpson. Appreciate y'all joining us here over on the PHNX Rising podcast. Again, an emergency edition. We got everything going today. It is going to be just, we got a lot to get through. And again, we're going to caveat, we're going to get into this Wednesday a little bit further, but let's just go through the raw, the facts, the raw emotions of what we have going through, right? Again, Phoenix Rising, this was a club that crashed out within the first round of the playoffs. 8th seed, didn't get it done against New Mexico. And what do? It was rumored during the week of the playoffs, again, Pa-Modou Kah coming in. And what happens a couple weeks later, it has been named official. Phoenix Rising put out a press release to get everything kicked off, right? Pa-Modou quoted, "I'm here because Phoenix Rising has the ambition and the drive to maintain its status as one of the top clubs in the USL Championship with a commitment to bringing home more hardware and developing players." Okay, this is a guy, right? He has a pedigree. He has come from all different types of, playing career-wise, going across MLS, from a coaching-wise, right? Has coached within different levels of American soccer, right? We have been, we've seen interviews. We have seen what he's doing is that he brings a level of intensity within what he does, as you can see, right, from his playing career, his non-playing career, his coaching career, from, starting with Vancouver Whitecaps to their second team as the assistant coach, going into a staff role with the main team for a couple of years, and then going on to, right, FC Cincinnati, right, team that, as we know, started within USL and then made its way to MLS, taking a role at Pacific FC in the Canadian Premier League, then going to North Texas in the MLS Next Pro, and then for the last 2 seasons, an assistant coach at Charlotte FC in MLS. Pa-Modou Kah, right? He brings a lot. Again, noted very much during his playing career for a physical playing style, for intense playing style, and someone who really just has a lot of different unique experiences. Again, showing his playing career as well, right? He's been quite literally all over the world. He has played, he is a Norwegian international, 10 caps there, has played, everywhere. And again, a lot of people are going to know him from his time in MLS, right? Portland Timbers and Vancouver Whitecaps, again, working within that Vancouver Whitecaps system. And again, now seeing what he's bringing to the coaching front. I mean, again, I'm just so curious of what everything's going to look like and how, he's going to translate over to this level here at USL. But again, we've kind of noted that he's been a versatile defender in leagues worldwide. Again, when he was at Pacific FC, led them to their first Canadian Premier League championship in 2021, named Canadian Premier League Coach of the Year when in North Texas. He guided the team to the playoffs in their inaugural season, and he does hold a UEFA A coaching license. And fun fact, fluent in 7 different languages, according to the club's release. So listen, this is going to be one. It's going to be very fascinating to see how this unfolds, right? We can talk about his pedigree. We can talk about the stats. We can talk about the accolades. But this is a guy who he needs to have the full-on really just understanding and grasp of what this Phoenix Rising system, this team, is kind of looking like, right? This fan base, as we know, has been, I want to say, starting for a championship, right? Because we won it in 2023, but I think more so it's really looking for some consistency, right? Again, we said on the show, 2023 was an absolutely magical run, but this club should be aspiring at minimum to be hosting playoff matches, right? I've said it, Owen has said it, that has been the credo of the pod, really for the last, year, 2, 3 years. This club has hosted playoff matches, but it has been a while. It has been a long while since they have hosted playoff matches, since they have won home playoff matches. It's something that Pa-Modou Kah needs to come in and really help reset the culture, right? You saw, we really haven't had this feeling in a way since Juan Guerra came in halfway through the 2022 season. And, that very much, it felt like a fresh start, right? Starting getting Juan Guerra over from Oakland Roots. And it felt like, right, you're hitting the reset. You're moving on from Rick Schantz, being able to hit the reset, give a full off season within what this club had to do. Again, as we know, Juan Guerra moves on. Danny Stone comes in at the right before the 2024 season kicks off, and didn't really quite feel like you had a full opportunity to really digest with the players, bringing the people that you want, and go from there. This is a wonderful opportunity for Pa-Modou Kah. I mean, listen, regardless, Phoenix Rising fans, whatever you guys feel about whether you're excited about the hire, whether you are hoping that we got someone with better pedigree, whether you are, curious, hey, this is someone from MLS, how is that going to translate over? I think the big thing here is this club, this front office, they acted sooner than what we've seen in past seasons. Again, right, you didn't know Juan Guerra was going to take an assistant coach role with Houston Dynamo at relatively the last minute last year. Get that. But this is something where this fan base has been crying out for more proactivity, for more action, for less reaction, rather trying to get ahead of it. And listen, this is their guy, right? Rumored weeks ago from Tom Bogert, and this is official today. So you got to be excited about that. You got to be excited that he is able to get people, get their guy in the door and being able to really galvanize the fan base. I'm super, super curious on how this team takes shape and what they are going to end up looking like from this mold. But I think the fact that you get him in through the door, a guy who has coaching ties to MLS, who has that playing style where if you're able to speak all these different languages, where you're able to relate to players, where you're able to take a bit of this no-nonsense policy, I think that's something that's going to really help the team. This team needs a bit of intensity, I think, right? You've seen some people come through the door and just different players. It's feeling like a bit of a reset. And right, you still have some guys, you have some pieces who you're excited about, even without knowing the full contract situation of these players, right? I think you have some pieces that you can build off of a good foundation, but also knowing there's going to be a lot of new faces coming through the door, right? Pa-Modou Kah is going to make this team within his own mold, within his own shape and feel. And I think that's absolutely, incredibly exciting. Again, this is all just the raw emotion that we're going off of. It's not a bad spot to be in, again, if you're a Phoenix Rising fan. I think the big thing, in addition to the proactivity, is I think you just now get a bit more time to, kind of get a better crack at being able to shape the players coming in to the coach, right? I mean, yes, we can talk about, okay, building out formations, what type of style he's going to be playing with, what has he traditionally done within his coaching roles and even his assistant coaching roles. But I think that's the big thing, is you are able to actually match up from a player personnel standpoint who you're bringing in, and it's less of a square peg round hole situation where, again, let's remind you, this is the fourth head coach the Phoenix Rising has had in the calendar year here in 2024. Again, if you're losing count, that's the reality of what we're going through. So I think it's just to have some consistency, to be able to say, hey, we have our man in place here from the head coaching staff, of the gaffer, the manager, whatever you want to call him, right? We have him in place early within the offseason, and the front office is now able to say, okay, you need to back him. You need to back him with the right players. You need to be able to fit to the style that he wants to bring in. But that, to me, is the biggest thing. This club has not really had that, again, since Juan Guerra came in and had not just a full offseason, but even was able to kind of see kind of what players he wanted as he was coaching through that end of the 2022 season. So I think this is something where it's going to be interesting what type of shape this entire team goes in, but you've got to be in a good spot. I mean, I see Albert in the chat agree it was critical. The front office acted swiftly and decisively. And I think, listen, again, if you're a Phoenix Rising fan, that's all that we have been, really clamoring for, on the podcast as a fan perspective from the media front is, can you act more proactively than you did reactively? The fact that this broke, the news when it did this morning, right? You got a USL championship that's going to be played, around the corner here in the weekend. And that's incredibly exciting. But I think this is something where this establishes Phoenix Rising, certainly within the news cycle. And you have to think as well, the other thing is there's going to be a lot of head coaching shifts as you're kind of seeing throughout the league, right? San Antonio moving on from their coaching position. Orange County moving on. There could be other chopping and changes within other parts of the league. Excuse me, not not Orange County, Sacramento, but Orange County could be a candidate there. There could be other teams in play. You moved before other teams could necessarily nail down their guy. That's the other piece here, right? You acted swiftly, being able to establish a coaching style. You acted swiftly within the transfer period, being able to get your guys in with enough time to actually get them into a more or less proper offseason. And you acted before other teams could try to get their guy, to try to get Pa-Modou Kah for themselves. So this is good, right? This is something, again, if you're a Phoenix Rising fan, you should be excited about the productivity that has happened. Again, this is a guy who I think the breadth of experience is going to be very, very enticing. Again, we already ran through all the different stops that he's had, but I think just being able to have, he has that kind of midfield role that he had in his playing career. I think that just gives you such a global perspective of what you have going on. And again, this is something that you haven't really seen from recent coaches of Phoenix Rising. You have to certain levels, absolutely. But I mean, to have a guy who said, yes, I've played in MLS in any level for multiple seasons, that's something that really holds a lot of weight. That's something where the players are coming in. They're going to be able to, say, hey, we understand that you have played at the highest level. You know what it takes to play at the highest level of American soccer. And that really does hold a lot of weight. That gives you a little bit more cachet in the bank. And that is no disrespect by any means to any of the managers who have coached Phoenix Rising here in previous seasons. But that's something where I think that has to resonate. That absolutely has to resonate. Being able to say he has played an MLS, he has coached an MLS. It makes just a massive difference. I think so much of what we can say now is purely just going off the gut feel, kind of going off of, just kind of how we're feeling within everything. But I think a lot of it, you're going to kind of see this take shape over the coming weeks, over the coming months. And I think the next step, right, is to start moving on players, right? Again, USL Championship, the final is going to be played on Saturday. And then what can you bring in? How can you start solidifying players and personnel after that? That's something where, again, the more you can get ahead of what's going on, the better. Jet in the chat, I love this. Intensity was needed. The lack of integrity from the team this year was disappointing. And I mean, listen, again, that's what we keep on going to is this front office, right? They have been criticized, maligned, rightly, wrongly, whatever, for acting second and acting less proactive, more reactive. This is new. This feels fresh. Again, I have not felt this feeling from this club since about 2 years ago when Juan Guerra came in. And even that was mid-season. You were still trying to figure out what happened. Yes, that very much felt like a fresh start, but it was still in the middle of everything. This team took a decisive step, even when, right, now that Diego Gomez in the club were parting ways. That was something where, while that was already anticipated in a lot of ways, it gave a signal that this is going to be going in a different direction. They need a reset. They need a facelift. And this is what you're getting here with Pa-Modou Kah. Kyle in the chat, producer Kyle, yeah, I think this is a great move. We absolutely love it, right? We asked the diehards as well, right? What kind of grade are you giving this coaching decision? We got Leakbird in the diehard Discord. Shout out the diehards as well joining in. Gave it a C+. I give any new coach C+, simply because we don't know how things will turn out. But I like the hire. I like the fact that the club seemed to know who they wanted and went after him. The only concern, and you know what, this is a fair point, that comes to mind immediately, that he is an ambitious young coach, which means we'll be right back here a year or two now. And that's maybe a little bit of cause for concern. I don't know the answer to this, but it begs the question of whether in future hires the club might want to sacrifice some ceiling in pursuit of stability. And listen, I love that. That's a very fair thing. I think that in USL, especially, USL Championship within some of the top teams, a lot of times you see some of these coaches going through and bouncing from USL Championship club to USL Championship club. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that in the sense of, what you're getting, you maybe bring a bit of a bigger name. But I think, especially at this level, even when you've known and seen it all, I think sometimes it helps to give a little bit more of a different influence. To me, especially knowing where this club has gone before and where they're looking to go, I absolutely love the idea of a young, ambitious hire, okay? It's a guy who is hungry. This is a guy who, again, I'm going to be a broken record a bit, but he has played at MLS. He has coached in MLS. He has a pedigree. Even if he has not had the full head coaching role at the highest level, he has head coaching experience. He has assistant coaching experience. I like to see that. And I think the big question is going to come down to, is Pa-Modou Kah going to be backed by the front office? And given the time is the key word, to grow this team as it should. Again, right? We have seen Juan Guerra during his tenure, right? Things maybe a bit rocky, stuck with him. Yes, it was a sixth place finish, but ended up getting to a championship. Can you give time to not just say we're going to get into the playoffs, we can win a game or two, but can you give time and support Pa-Modou Kah with the ambitions of, we want to host playoff matches. We want to be getting back to one of the top teams, not just in the Western Conference, but of all of USL, because that's the standard for this team. Again, rightly, wrongly, or unfairly, that is the pressure that faces Phoenix Rising. That's what faces Pa-Modou Kah on here, is when he hits the ground running, very first day, right? It is official. He needs to start getting back to having this club contending for supporter shields, contending for top four finishes, contending for another championship. Jen in the chat, was it weird that the sporting director didn't comment in the news release? Does Kah have that responsibility now? Totally fair question. Listen, I try not to read too much into press releases. I think it's one of those things where you can, I don't want to say take it out of context, but right, it's getting the news out there. Guess it's maybe a little bit unconventional. Again, you do have the quote from club president Bobby Dooley. Pa's breadth of experience as both a player and coach across global soccer makes him an incredible addition to Phoenix Rising. In our conversation, it's clear he's an intense, driven leader with a strong reputation for approachability and building genuine connections with and getting the most out of his players. Kah's background gives him unique insight into creating unity within diverse rosters, and we're confident his drive and tactical acumen will elevate our team both on and off the field. Yeah, I mean, again, you get the quote from Phoenix Rising club president Bob Dooley. Yeah, I don't read too much into why Brendan McCarthy's commenting or not. I think regardless whether or not how responsibility goes from there, I don't read too much into that personally. Let's see, Albert in the chat, the less we hear from others. Yep, totally fair. Again, getting that perspective. And, oh, yeah, Cody in the chat, fire hot, 9 to 10. I love it. I love it. Giving that grade. Give us a grade in the chat, right? Immediate kind of grade on the higher A, B, C, D, F scale. Give me a 1 through 10, whatever kind of grading scale you want to give. Shout out in the chat. I mean, listen, I think that's the thing that you continue to reference from Pa-Modou Kah is, again, when it's quoted by, I will say this from the press release, when it's quoted in the press release, right? Intense, driven leader. When you hear that in interviews, it just comes across. That's not even something that you need to read a quote or hear people talk about. The intensity that he brings when he's delivering interviews, in even the bits and clips that you hear from training or within little, Charlotte FC months and months ago. I think it was back in April, released a little kind of get to know you series. And it was about Pa-Modou Kah. Even just him on the training pitch, the intensity that he brings, that is something that, listen, you either have that or you don't. Some people view that as a positive. Some people view it as a negative. I'm excited for someone who is young to bring that intensity because, right, sometimes you have some of these older coaches come in, bring that intensity. Maybe their message wears a bit dry. This, to me, is incredibly exciting. We got Anthony in chat. Glad they were able to get the deal done. Excited to see what he brings to the squad. Again, on my end, right? And again, we're going to have Owen, Mr. Vacations, is finally back from his vacation. He'll be back on Wednesday and he'll give his thoughts. We'll get Reese giving his thoughts again on the pod on Wednesday evening. But again, my personal thoughts is this is exciting. Okay. Hey, listen, everyone, it's totally natural to maybe go after a bigger pedigree, a larger pedigree name, or maybe go through a different USL championship coach. And I think if this squad did that, if this front office did that, I'm curious what the reception would have been, because you can point to someone who maybe would have been a serial winner and you can say, listen, there's a bit more of a certainty, and maybe the floor, maybe the ceiling isn't as high, but the floor is a little bit higher. And that would be a safe hire. I like the ambition from this front office. I really do. I think that's something where even if you bring the lack of stability from it, the positives to me so far outweigh what they could be going after, because that's absolutely massive in terms of just what you're getting from this squad. Being able to bring someone in who has that intensity, who has that experience, I like it so much better than the quote unquote safe hire to me. Again, people might disagree on that. Maybe they wanted to see someone who they were able to bring in someone from USL Championship who has more of a head coaching pedigree. I'm curious if maybe that's the consternation from some fans, but I like this hire. I really do. Time will tell, right? And maybe, I really hope we're not playing revisionist history a year from now, having a similar emergency press conference. But I think that's where this needs to come down to. For all of the hype and the excitement that we can bring coming on board for Pa-Modou Kah, it isn't ultimately up to us. It's not ultimately up even to the players. It is up to this front office to be able to give him time. Yes, you need to see results. This is a results league. Always has been, always will be. But I think especially with someone who is a bit more of an unknown, someone who has a bit of that question mark of what is that coaching experience, it's going to be massive to be able to get them through the door and give him time to cook. Let him cook, right? Same thing we said about Juan Guerra. Let him cook. See him supported early in the transfer period with his guys coming in, not the square peg round hole situation. You don't have to worry about, oh, well, we don't know what type of players to bring in, not scrapping for mid-season deals before the deadline or anything like that. You want to see guys coming in early and often, fitting the mold of what Pa-Modou Kah brings to the table. And we saw that bit with Juan Guerra. We saw it a little bit even last offseason, but really that was probably just more reinforcements. You do see some lone players coming in, but I think last season even really it's kind of just some depth. No one really from a marquee piece. Again, we can talk about the guys like the Danny Trejos and the Carlos Harveys, and those were marquee additions that came in here. Regardless whether or not it's caliber like that, you just want to see impact players coming in. And that's what I'm excited. I hope that this front office gives him time and backs him for the resource standpoint to do so. Because again, everything that I'm saying, everything that we're going to be talking about on Wednesday, everything from your reactions, unfortunately, none of that is going to matter if Pa-Modou Kah is not supported in the right way. Again, that is something we cannot stress enough. Got Andrew in the chat with his grade. It's an A+ grade for him. Love it. And then again, Albert with a great question. Do we know Kah's preferred formation and playing style? This is actually something that we discussed a little bit on the pod. Oh, goodness. The rumors were right before the week of the opening round of Rising's playoff match against New Mexico. And I believe we were discussing, you have to go back within how North Texas plays, even seeing a bit of his influence on Charlotte FC. If I recall, and again, news kind of broke a little bit, so we're going to have to dive in, do some more research. I'm going to leave this to Stat Lackey for the pod on Wednesday. But it's going to be one high intensity. Believe he plays, don't quote me on this, I believe it is a 4-3-3. But again, something that we're going to have to look a bit further. Again, I think one thing you can tell pretty much, of course, based on the intensity that he brings from his playing career and everything like that, it's going to be a high tempo. I think that regardless of how this team is going to be building up in attack, I think it's safe to say that you can expect a team who is going to be pressing, who is going to be running down. And it's going to be a physical team. This is going to be a Phoenix Rising team that the players that they bring in, you are going to need to work hard off the ball, right? I'm not sure how much changes, whether or not, is this team maybe playing a high line? Is this team, what type of attacking style? That has to be seen. And candidly, that's something that we need to dive a little bit further. And we will have that for you later in the week, ahead of Wednesday's podcast and even after that. But from the intensity, you're going to need to bring in guys who work off the ball, right? There are pieces that Phoenix Rising have that maybe there are some players who, right, maybe they are used to a little bit more off press style. Maybe it's someone who they're already prone to pressing heavy. And you're going to need to bring in guys who I think can work hard off the ball. That to me is, right, that's very much a buzzword. That's what you hear throughout the industry and throughout football. But I really think that's what you're going to expect, bar none, from this squad, right? So bring in guys who fit that mold. Got the rickety bridge, new coach. Let's go. I love it. It's, again, this is an exciting time. I keep on going back to that. Regardless whether or not you are excited about the how or anything, you have to credit the ambition and more or less getting ahead of it. That's the big thing here. Please keep commenting in the chat whether or not, what's your guys' grade, what you guys feel about everything. Again, as a reminder, we will be back Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. Owen will be back. Stat Lackey will be back, and we're going to break this down a little bit further. I mean, this is the big news. We got some USL playoffs and everything to talk about, but they're right. This is why you guys are here. This is why you're tuning in as we're scrambling, getting this done. It's not even 10:30 yet, and you guys are in here watching a little emergency podcast, PHNX Rising Edition. We appreciate you. We're going to let this breathe for right now, but again, join us Wednesday night talking about this a little bit further. Till then, follow us at PHNX__rising, because double the underscore, I would say double the breaking news, but hey, we'll see what else happens. Hopefully nothing, but yes, PHNX__rising. Follow me on Twitter at Max David Simpson. I'll read more from Rickety Bridge. Doing more research on formations. Do know formation Rising are going to run. Again, still TBD. I believe it's going to be formed back. But again, need to go a little bit further in depth on that. So don't want to misquote. But again, join us on Wednesday, Rickety Bridge at 6 p.m. for a bit more information. Again, follow me on Twitter. I'm Max David Simpson. Follow Owen on Twitter at OJEvans18. Follow Reese on Twitter at Reese11_. We'll be back. It's an exciting time. Again, this has been rumored for a bit, and I think now that it's officially official, just makes it that much more exciting. And we don't have to play the what if game. We don't have to play the when is this going to be official and when we can actually go about building this team. It starts now. A new era of Phoenix Rising didn't start last week, doesn't start next week. It starts right now. Transfers coming in, being able to build things off the coach who you wanted, who has been rumored for weeks, and you got your guy, Pa-Modou Kah, official coach of Phoenix Rising moving forward. And it is a beautiful game, but it's way more beautiful when you got something good to look forward to. Have a great day, everyone.
We all silly like the mayor.